On this episode of Scammer Stories, a son now questions everything after his mother's romance scam. Now, not the actual scam, but his whole life, back to his childhood and his mother. Did he ever really know her? These are questions I have myself, as do others like us. I found Nick on Reddit, actually. He was trying to help other family members, hoping to convince their loved ones to get out of the scam. He has emails and recordings on everything and shared some of that with me for this podcast. Now, it's going to sound harsh at times, but it's just a typical conversation between a romance scam victim and a son or daughter. I think you'll understand why the adult children end up in therapy after this. We're going to start the podcast with some of the recorded conversation, then have Nick go back and explain how they got here and what they were talking about. There was a lot of background noise, so I had to run it through artificial intelligence, which makes some of the words hard to understand. So I tried to piece it together the best I could. I think you'll get the gist.
It was my business, my money. What business was any of that at yours? Tell me. You can't be...
Because I loved you and I didn't want to see you getting ruined. But you know what? That was too much for you.
Well, you used the past tense with love.
Yes, I did.
And you have made it very clear.
You've made it very clear. You made my choice for me. You won't change.
I won't change?
No.
I'm nothing. I am nothing to you. Why would I change? What did I do to you? I did nothing to you. To you. You came
To
to
me.
my business.
To me. I had to listen to it every day. It made me sick to my damn stomach. I tried to help you. And how did you treat me? Yeah. Exactly.
You think it's not cruel?
Do you think I enjoy this?
I think you're having a good time.
Oh, Jesus. You really are something.
Really?
Yes.
So that's actually the lighter side of the conversations without her name calling. Hard to believe that a middle-class, all-American family could end up here. So I'll let Nick start from the beginning.
Well, I grew up pretty middle-class home. Both parents were together, but definitely an unhappy marriage, let's put it like that.
Sounds like my upbringing.
Yeah, well, I could explain why that was probably a little bit later. Perfectly honest, not a bad upbringing. I'm an only child. My parents had me pretty late, so it was just me. And I had a good relationship with my mom going through.
When did this whole nightmare start?
Started there and, well, take a little bit of, just before the scam started is when she changed, noticeably for me. My parents at that point had separated. She was up here living with me at my house. And two things happened. Her boyfriend of the last, I think they'd been seeing each other for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. He died in a pretty sucky way. Then her youngest brother also passed away within like a couple of months of each other.
Do you mind telling us the way that her boyfriend died, just so we get an idea?
Yeah. Gary was a nice guy. Just he had gone in to the hospital. He had an enlarged prostate. That was it. And unfortunately, when the nurse went to catheterize him, she screwed up. She screwed up the first one and screwed up the next two, I think. She tried like 3 times and couldn't do it correctly. And that led to urine getting in his blood system, and he was a diabetic. And with the sugars getting into the blood system, it eventually created a infection near his heart. That is what he eventually passed away from.
So was that a long process or a short process?
Maybe about 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was kind of tragic.
Yeah, that would be hard. Okay, so just to get an idea what her psychological state was. So you said that she changed after that. What do you mean?
It was like she just didn't care anymore. Honestly, now looking back on it, I can know that kind of the mask for her. She just didn't care about maintaining it anymore. It started, she just kind of was very secretive, didn't talk very much. And I figured, she's just going through grief. I'll just be here when she wants to talk and stuff. And then one day I came home and she had met a guy online. This was an actual person from Arizona, and he had flown up here to see her. And I come home, and keep in mind, this is my house too. And there's just a strange guy. They're at the living room. They're about to have dinner. And and I'm like, who is this?
But looking back on it, you're probably like, I would have been okay with that. At least it was a real person.
If she had, and we'd had the thing, she dated a few other guys when she came up here, and she was always respectful about it. If they were going to be doing something, she'd let me know, hey, I'm going to be gone, such and such, or if they're coming over, she'd always let me know, at least a day, usually further ahead. No problem. We'd always had a pretty respectful relationship, but I just come home and there's a stranger. I'm like, I go up to her. I'm like, who is this? What is he doing here? She's like, oh, he came up here from Arizona to meet me. I'm like, you didn't think to tell me? And I'm like, I'm not that hungry. You guys just have dinner.
Were you living in California at the time? Is that where you
No, I'm living up here in Washington State.
Oh, so he'd traveled all that way.
Yeah, and it was just like, what the heck? And, I told her, let's just have a little chat downstairs. And I was just like, this is very disrespectful. I don't mind if people come over, but, you got to tell me. I just don't like coming home from work and being like, hey, there's somebody here you've never even heard of. And she just kind of blew me off. And afterwards, when they had dinner and he eventually left, she said, I ruined dinner and everything else. And I'm like, what? I'm like, at that point, I was just like, whatever. Okay. And, maybe like a week or two later, they wanted to go someplace, Hawaii, actually. So they flew out to Hawaii and spent like a week out there. And then this was kind of by text, but it was like one line text type of stuff. And she's like, oh, I'm going to go to his place in Arizona. I was like, okay.
You mean she was texting you that she was going to Hawaii?
Yeah. She told me she was going to go to Hawaii. Then they went. And then when she was in Hawaii, she's like, I'm going to go back to Arizona with him for like a week or so. I was like, okay, fine. And then she gets down there, and then she says, and this was all in singular tense. It was all, I'm coming home. It's like, okay, are you flying? If you need somebody to pick you up, I'll drive down. No, I'm going to drive. That's weird. Are you going to rent a car? Didn't answer. Apparently, she thought it was a good idea for her and him to travel in his RV all the way up here and then park his RV at my house.
Oh. Now, in my neighborhood, they won't let you do that.
I live on county land at the end of a road, so it really wasn't a big deal.
Okay, you don't have an HOA like I do.
Yeah, no HOA. Nobody to rat me out or complain. But yeah, she didn't say anything about him coming up there with me, nothing about staying a while. They just get up here and it's like, hey, he's going to be staying for a month.
Inside the house or in his camper?
It started inside the house, but as he kind of realized that things were very, very cold at that point.
Tense, yeah.
Yeah, he mostly stayed out in the camper, and it was a decent sized RV, like about a 30-footer. She would kind of divide her time between. So that was kind of the real starting point of us really having some issues. And then when he finally left, I don't know what precipitated that. I can guess, I guess, but I don't know the exact details because I just wasn't in the mood for asking. And it was after that she kind of really went hard on the online dating stuff, and that's when the scams started.
Fairly quickly? Usually they do.
I would say her first scammer she started talking with him about a month or so later. So I think that was about August.
That's about how long it took for my mom, too.
And they started talking, and I didn't think much of it at the time. They were talking mostly through email, but they would talk at the beginning, and then it was phone calls all the time and text messages and stuff like that. And I figured she was talking to somebody because she was, when they're in that honeymoon stage, they're all giddy and happy. And every time the phone rings or the text comes in, they're just smiles.
They get that dopamine hit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The dopamine hit, it hits hard. And so, yeah, it was maybe about,
It's hard to
uh,
remember all the. I still have a hard. I have to go back and review before I do interviews because there's so many details of these romance scams. Keeping
yeah, I mean,
them.
I've got it all, I literally have it all written down. And yeah, it was in September. And when he asked for the first amount of money, now I didn't know this at the time. She made up a lie saying she was putting a down payment on a house. And about a year, maybe 2 years beforehand, she had put about 50,000 into Bitcoin, her and a friend of hers. And she asked me to help, well, basically do it for her. She asked me to send $40,000 worth to a certain address. So I was like, "Well, what's it for?" And she, gave me the lie that was down payment for a house that's going to be built in the here in the community, and there was a housing development going up. So at first, I really didn't think a whole lot of it, but after doing it, I was like, "This just isn't sitting right." Like I've never heard of a construction company or any company that's taken large amounts of crypto for down payments on things. It just was really fishy. So I actually talked to her best friend, and because she buys real estate and stuff like that, and she's got a fair amount of money. And I was like, hey, I just sent all this money to some person I have no idea about, and my mom said it was for this down payment on this new community. She's like, they're not even taking down payments for the community because she was looking into buying a place there. And I
Oh,
was like, really? She's like, yeah, no, that's not for that. Like, just matter of fact. So I talked to her that afternoon, my mother, and I was like, where the hell did I just send this money to? Well, it took a while, but it finally, oh, you sent to this guy, claimed his name was Richard, and that he needed help with his project overseas and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what the hell? And but after that, she just clammed up. I mean, just wasn't talking at all
yeah. The
because
more
I kept
that's what happened
questioning.
with mine. The more questions I would ask her, my mom
Yep.
would say, "I'm just going to not talk to you about it anymore if you're going to continue to ask me these questions."
Yeah. Same type of deal. So because I had set up her emails and everything for her, and I had the password for it, I started going through her emails. Judge me if you want, but
No, I'm not judging you at all.
yeah, not you, but
Yeah,
anybody that hears, if, I don't really care.
yeah.
When you see a loved one in a situation where they are, well, when you fully believe that they're not capable of making a informed decision, and you need to do some digging, I think most people would find it reasonable to dig, especially if you have the means. It's not like I, hacked her email or anything like that. I'd set it all up for her. I'd done stuff for her, emails and stuff like that, and set things up. So I just started going through, and I found the emails and stuff like that, and his fake contract, the fake company, and all that stuff. So I started, really looking into it. And I had the pictures that he was using.
Yeah, my mom had a contract too, a picture of a contract. It looked like it was
Oh
something from
yeah,
kindergarten. It was hideous.
yeah. No, I mean this one. It was all the stuff with quote unquote his name and the
Mhm.
dates and stuff like that. It was pretty well photoshopped. So, I finally come to her. I'm like, look, I don't think this guy's real at all. I think this is a whole bunch of bull, and I think you're getting scammed. And she's like, no, I'm not, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, fine, let's have him send a picture of himself holding the newspaper of today. Maybe not the best choice because that really reinforced. I mean, it was clearly
Yeah,
photoshopped.
but at the time, you just like me, we were learning. Yeah,
And 4 years ago
it
was when
wasn't.
it really started
Hmm.
gaining traction.
Yep.
And there wasn't the resources out there like there is now. Like the
Hmm.
AARP's got a good scam hotline. I will
Hmm.
talk to elderly people. I always push people to go to Scam Haters United
Hmm.
on Facebook.
Hmm.
But back then there wasn't almost anything.
No, that's why I started this podcast. I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, there wasn't. Reddit was one of the few places I could see it, and even that was pretty rare. And anyways, he sent the picture which, it was pretty clear that the hands and the face, the texture, and the color of the skin were quite the same. But yeah, it only reinforced it for her. And I just like, oh, crap. Because about that time, my parents had finally moved on to getting divorced. And she was going down there to California to finalize the divorce. And she was going to be getting the house. He was going to be keeping most of his assets and stuff like that. Anyway, it was apparently a fair divorce. Not that she didn't fight it all the way. That type of stuff in the C family.
Sometimes when people listen to these podcasts and they hear me laughing, they get upset with me because it's such a serious topic. But if you're a child of someone who's been scammed, it's a coping. I mean, this all this stuff is so crazy.
It's laugh or cry.
Yes. How do you deal with it? So if I want to laugh, I'm going to laugh.
God, how do you deal with it? I don't know. I was a zombie through this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, once I knew what was going on, every time I heard the phone ring, my stomach was in knots.
Oh.
It was difficult to eat. You become hyper vigilant. I mean, every time she's talking, is she talking to him? What is she saying? This type of stuff. And it's horrible. It just eats at you.
See, I didn't have to deal with that because I wouldn't let her live here.
Yeah, my mom was in my house doing this stuff.
Oh, I don't know.
It was, and so anyway, she was out of the house down in California, dealing with finalizing the divorce, getting the house, and seeing family. And when she was down there, was when I was finally able to get a good amount of time. I took time off of work. I've got my own business, so I just kind of pushed things aside to figure this all out. And I was finally able to figure out whose pictures they were using. A guy named Sergio Alberti. He's a real estate agent in Dubai. I mean, a good guy to use pictures from. He's got tons of stuff and rich and everything else. I finally had, my smoking gun. And through this, I still see her emails. And I saw that he had sent her an email saying he needed another $30,000. So later that afternoon, she calls me up and she's like, I need you to send another batch of money to Richard. And I just flat out said no. I said, Mom, this is a scam. He's not real. I'm not sending any money. Now, granted, this is your money. But if you wanted to send it to him, you're going to have to come up here and do it yourself because I will not have a part in it. And, oh, man, the verbal tirade that came out of her mouth after that was quite something.
Yeah, the same thing happened to me. She started bringing up everything I'd done wrong in childhood and all the lies I told her when I was a teenager.
Oh, you're a terrible son. Why won't you do this for me?
Yep.
It goes from anger to being the victim to guilt and crying and the whole 9 yards. And I just stood firm. I said, no, I'm not sending anything. And if you feel so strongly about this, you're going to have to do it yourself. I did send her some of the information. I said, look up Sergio Alberti on Facebook. His profile's right there. And I sent that to her by email with a link. And it kind of calmed her down for a bit. She was very kind of defeated for a bit. And then when she finally finished stuff down in California and came back, I had been talking to her best friend up here, and I knew my mother even from when I was a kid. I may not have known exactly what she was, but I knew if she felt slighted, her anger would be explosive. And I knew I'd have to show her everything I found.
Yeah, but instead of taking the anger out on the scammer,
they
take their anger out on their children. It just doesn't make any sense.
Kill the messenger type of stuff. Yeah. So actually, I asked her best friend to be over here. We were going to have kind of a little mini intervention because I had looked into getting a professional interventionist and I actually talked to one, but I couldn't afford $10,000 for.
Geez.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. They're
worth it, but that's a lot.
They're worth it, but because I believe my mother was a pretty rational person. If I showed her the truth and everything, that she would get it. She'd feel horrible about it, but she would get it. And I was wrong about that, but I didn't know that at the time. So when she got back up here, I was at the house because I knew she was going to be in that afternoon. So I contacted her friend and we basically just broke it all down for her. Everything. I showed her, whose pictures they were using, everything online, how the company was fake, all this stuff that I had filed an IC3 with the FBI. I basically just broke it all down point by point. At the end, I'm like, there's some stuff you got to do. We got to get you a new phone number, because he's just going to keep calling your phone. If you're going to meet people on the internet, don't talk to anybody you don't meet after a few days. Only people here locally, just real safe stuff. And she seemed to be on board. I think mostly she was quiet about it because of her best friend. And I think if she wasn't there, she would have read me the riot act type of stuff. But she was very held back. So I thought, she kind of got it. And, things were kind of tense, but I was hopeful, and but I could still see see her emails through this time, and she about a week later, because he kept sending emails and stuff, and we did get her phone number changed. She did message him back saying that my son found all this stuff about you. Are you real and everything? And then she was angry at him for taking all her money because it wasn't just the 40,000. She sent him a brand new phone, MacBook, both a MacBook and a iPhone through the mail actually, and
My mom did the
some
same thing
other
because his laptop
yeah
was broken
some
and he had work to do
mhm.
overseas.
Yeah, I think his was confiscated by
No.
border security there in quote unquote Cyprus or Turkey or whatever it was. Yeah, they all have a story.
Hmm.
And she had made because he had told her he was going to be coming to California when she was in there.
Hmm.
So she'd gotten a 2-night stay at a nice hotel in San Francisco where he was going to be coming in, and she was going to introduce him to her family and all this. And of course, it didn't happen. He had an excuse he couldn't come.
What was his excuse? The evidence you found? How did he convince her otherwise?
Oh, he didn't. But he just said that that's not true. I'll tell you everything when I see you in person, type of stuff. And she was in her kind of rageful moment. She was like, this isn't even real and stuff like that. And your 4-letter words type of thing. And so I figured that once he ghosted her, she would have figured she actually got it. And this was all right before Christmas time. I had to do it then was because not only did I have everything I thought I needed to do it, the house is also, it was on the market and was going to go real quick. And she was about to have a lot of liquid cash very quickly. And I knew he knew that too. So I knew if I didn't get her out of this, that he would milk her very quickly once she had that money in hand.
Now, I'm kind of surprised he ghosted her and didn't. A lot of times they will continue on with the scam, show their real identity, and just say that they've fallen in love.
Well, quote unquote, Richard ghosted her. But as you probably well know, these people work in groups.
Hmm.
And not long after that was the second scammer. I don't know much about him because at that point I was pretty disgusted with the whole situation. I thought she had, kind of figured it out, but no, she moved on to scammer number 2. I'm assuming at least 1 through 3 that I know of, all the same group, because it was very quick, back to back type of stuff. Yeah, I think she moved on to number 2 in January, so maybe a month afterwards. And I know she sent him about $1,000 through Bitcoin because I saw her receipt for a Bitcoin transaction through her emails. And I was just like, oh, God. She was really sneaky about number 2. Like I said, I was pretty disgusted. So I stopped going through her emails. I just kind of stopped and was like, this is how she's going to be. I need to figure out how I need to do this. Yeah, so I didn't even know about number 2 until number 3 came along in February. And same stuff, all on the phone. What was number 3's name? Axel. That's it, Axel. And same story, pretty much. Some differences, and in some of the little details, but overall the same type of story overseas. I think he also worked on the oil rigs or something like that. And I mean, I'm just sitting there like wanting to pull my hair out, like, can you not see this is the same thing? And I was like, fine, at this point, I'm like, you know what? Let's have a FaceTime call. Put him on FaceTime. She's like, oh, okay, yeah, sounds like a good idea. And of course, his excuse, oh, I can't. We've got bad internet here
Uh-huh.
and stuff like that. And I'm like, my father-in-law lives in Samoa. He can FaceTime his family whenever he wants to. And I guarantee if you're working for these companies, they've got internet. I tried talking to her, tried to reason with her, showing her, this is the same thing. And finally, she got so angry with me. She's like, I'm not stupid. And that's when she told me about scammer number 2. And she's like, see, I learned. She sent me the email when the guy asked her for $28,000. And she said no. And I'm like, I'm glad you didn't send a large amount, but I know you sent a small amount. And that's how these scams always work. They ask for a small amount. Once they know you're on the hook, they start gouging you for more. And I'm like, this is the same deal with the first one, just like the first one. No, it's not. This one's real. I deserve a guy like this. And I'm like, oh my God.
That's exactly.
And
My mom said, I'm a good person and I deserve a guy like this with money. And I'm
oh,
going to
yeah.
have diamonds and emeralds on both hands.
Yeah. And she threw it in my face like, you're going to be sorry when he comes over here. We're going to move into a big old house and he's going to take care of me for the rest of his life. And I'm just like, Mom, this isn't real. He's not real. He won't even do a FaceTime call with you. I mean, come on. I couldn't deal with the stress any longer. It's obvious that something is really wrong with you. I got you I had found you a therapist after the first one, hoping that you could see this. And because still at that point, I thought it was just grief, unprocessed grief from, the loss she had with her brother and her boyfriend. And I was just like, I can't make you stop. I can't make you do anything. But if this is how you're going to live your life, you have to move. You have to get out of here. I've waited. You've got your money from the divorce. You can find your own place. I'm not going to interfere anymore. But if this is what you want, fine. But I can't be a part of it. And if you ever get out of it, I'm here. And she was sad. But when she found a place, though, she was happy. She was so happy to move out. I moved her out myself. I, packed her all her stuff. I did all the moving for her. I did everything for her. And at the end, I asked for my key back to the house. And I said, I wish you luck. That was when she was still with scammer number 3. I know that one went on because her phone's on my phone bill. I know that one went on for at least 2 or 3 months and until that one fizzled out. And I had my own stuff to deal with. Throughout all this, I was married, but my wife was overseas, and I was working to get her over here. She's a New Zealand citizen.
That's a lot.
Yeah, working through the USCIS system is a lot, and unfortunately, not long after we had submitted our paperwork was when COVID hit, and the wait times, because we were figuring it'd be about a year, because we were married. It would be about a year is what we had figured. And when COVID hit, wait times went through the roof, and it ended up being about, a little over 2.5 years. Yeah, so not long after she moved out was when we finally got word that her interview was going to be held on such and such day. We could start making plans for her to come back here. We did, and I finally got my wife back over here. And it was after that when she texted and said, I'm done. I'm not talking to that guy anymore. Can we have a relationship again? And I was a bit hesitant, obviously, once bitten, twice shy type of stuff. But I was like, you know what? Okay. So, we started having a relationship again. She didn't talk about it at all. The only thing she said was, I'm no longer talking to that guy. Not, not that scammer, not that anything else, just that guy. And I was just like, whatever, fine, I don't want to be part of your drama anymore. Kind of baby steps at the beginning. We'd have dinner at her place once or twice a month type of stuff. And I just told her I wanted to kind of slowly build back up a relationship. But yeah, that really wasn't going for her. She wanted to just kind of jump back in like nothing ever happened. And it finally came to a head because my wife came back in September, and it finally started coming to a head about the next year. I think it was about August. So we were just kind of doing once a month, twice a month type of things, meeting up for a better part of a year, just kind of regaining some trust and everything. And after that, she sent me a text and she wanted to have dinner at my house. And that was a Friday afternoon, and I didn't see until Friday evening. And I was like, well, I need to talk to my wife about this because she'd been through the whole thing. I'd been talking with her the entire time the scams were going on and everything. And she's like, well, should we do it? Kind of, just grin and bear it type of thing. I'm like, okay. So we talked about it on Saturday, finally agreed to it on Sunday morning. And it was football season, so we're Seahawks fans. And so I was watching the game Sunday afternoon. It was the afternoon game. It was gonna end at 4. So I figured I'd call my mom after the game. We could talk about the game and we could invite her over for dinner for the next weekend. And right at about halftime, she sent this email that just kind of blew me away. And it was just rage in an email. That's the only way to put it. Just angry. And I was like, whoa, like I did not see it coming at all. That's when I was like, none of this is making sense. Like her behavior just doesn't make any sense to me anymore. So I started just kind of researching things like, rage, entitlement, that type of stuff. And you can guess where this is going. And my mom she's actually a covert narcissist. She's very, very good at hiding it and very good at playing the victim. But once I started kind of going down this route and I was watching the YouTube videos of Dr. Ramani and, reading up online on psychological journals and the DSM-5, there's 13 categories. If they meet these criteria, they have to have like 5 or more. And I started going through, I'm like, wow, my mom's got 8.
In your research, did it say what causes someone to be narcissistic?
There's a couple of different things, but mostly it's a nurture type of thing. It's usually difficult childhoods, kind of like a defense mechanism. And they'll think, they're so great, especially because they made it out of such and such situations that, they're better than other people. I'll fully admit she had a difficult childhood. Her father died very early. Her eldest sister just skipped town, basically. Her mom was kind of catatonic after it because it was a very tragic death. So she was left to kind of take care of the family and raise her younger brother. She managed to, work her way out and get out, and she became a nurse and, was a very good nurse and did a good job and stuff like that. It's so ingrained in her now that there's no breaking it. It's just who they are. And it's a personality disorder. It's not like a mental illness like bipolar and stuff like that, where you can get, a treatment that can help and stuff like that. There's no meds for this. There are some people that are narcissistic, usually the grandiose people, because they lack not the ability, but they just lack empathy. Not in the sense like a psychopath where they just can't do it. Their brain chemistry just can't do it. For them, it's just subconsciously, they just don't care.
So where does your relationship stand today then?
Oh, we're completely no contact. Her choice, because it was kind of spiraling there at the end of last year was when the emails kept coming and it was getting worse and worse and worse. And finally, early this year, she got angry again and actually cornered my wife at her work. Yeah, I was very, very unhappy about that. Not that and one thing I've never once yelled at her. I never called her names, never put her down, even during the scams and everything. And much as want to just yell and scream like, "Why can't you see this?"
You want to shake them. Yeah.
Yeah, you just want to shake them like, "How could you not see that this isn't reality?" Type of stuff. Like, how are you so stupid? Like, never did that. I never put her down or anything. But after that, after she went after my wife, I still never yelled, but I just told her, you know, we're done. You will never do that to my wife again. If you have an issue with me, you come to me. You know where I live. She lives in my town. She lives 10-minute drive away. You can come over here and talk to me. And it took about a week, and she finally came over, and we discussed it, and it was mostly about money, obviously, because I had bought my house from my parents because they owned it outright. And then after the divorce, she wanted all the money from the mortgage payment. And that's not how it was going to work. It was going to be split because they decided to leave the house because they didn't want to make apparently it any messier in the divorce with them splitting financials after 40 plus years. They actually both left it off of the divorce decree. And I was like, okay, fine, but it's going to be split, obviously. But she wanted all of it, and I told her no, and she got obviously very unhappy about that too. And so finally, I just told her, look, that's not happening. You got a problem with it? Take me to court, I guess. But good luck.
It's interesting to hear Nick's theories on the psychology of his mother. I think it's going to sound familiar to a lot of other adult children dealing with this. It's interesting to go all the way back to their childhoods to see how they ended up here. Not that you can use that to get them to stop or anything. It just might help the victims' families cope a little better. On another note, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the trip to Washington, D.C. with advocating against romance scammers. We had to take 2 full days of meetings, and in between, we talked about possible solutions. My biggest takeaway is people on Capitol Hill, they still know very little about romance scams. So we have a lot of work to do. Until next time, Scammer Warriors.